Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another kind of masterclass in working with SketchUp. And this time we're going to talk about creating fantastic presentations, animations with animation tools inside of SketchUp. And I'm going to jump in SketchUp itself. Hope you can see the screen clearly. And the first thing I'm going to show is the simplest kind of animation, which you call is an camera animation. It can be simply created using scenes and the export animation option. So the first thing I'm going to open is the scenes dialog window. And at first, you're going to see it in a simplified way where I can create my first scene. It's going to prompt to create a new style as well. For now, I'm going to create it as a new one. And instantly I see up in this corner appears scene 1. If I click on it, I could return to the position where it was created. So if I wanted to create another view, I could simply turn the camera, press add scene, and you'll see the second scene over here. And just by clicking on them, I can jump between the first and second scenes. I can also do that simply by clicking on the scenes and scene dialog window. Uh, Here I'm making a double click. And if I wanted to change, for instance, the angle of the saved camera, I could just go maybe from a lower point of view, and I can either press right click on scene 1 and use update to update it, or you'll see the same kind of function just by selecting a scene and pressing on update in a scenes dialog window. What I could also do is change how I see the scenes in this window. By default, you probably should see them as thumbnails, large ones or smaller ones, where you can see it has to update thumbnails, of course. And there's also options to choose smaller thumbnail, detailed view where I can see the scene name as well as the image itself, and also as a list view. I prefer this view because it's easier for me to create the scenes and manage them when I don't have to wait every time for the thumbnail to update. But if it's easier for you to understand visually what's inside each of these scenes, then of course it's better to leave it as an um, thumbnail. I'm going to go ahead and create the third scene as well. So we see they work well. And for instance, if I wanted to create a presentation directly inside of SketchUp, I could press on scene 1, for instance, with right click, and you'll see there's an option play animation. By pressing it, there's going to be a 1 second delay, and then I'm jumping to this next view. At any moment, I can simply press on enter or space to pause the animation and press again to resume it. And to change the timing of the transition between scenes and the delay, you simply have to go to Window, Model Info, and there in the first section, Animation, you'll see these two options. So, for instance, if I turned on Scene Delay, I wouldn't have delay at all, and I could change, for instance, the scene transition to say 10 seconds, And now, if I play the animation, at first you're gonna have to wait these 10 seconds to um, kind of go to this first scene, and then it should start. So now the presentation is a lot slower, not so erratic, and it's easier to view everything in the model. In a stopped animation, and one problem with presenting directly from SketchUp is that you'll see that as my model is complex enough, I can't see the shadows while orbiting because SketchUp usually degrades the visual quality of these stylistic effects, so it'd be easier to model. But for presentation, of course, it's a problem because, well, I want these shadows. So the best thing you could do is to save this as an animation simply by going to File, Export, and choosing Animation. So if you have at least two scenes, you'll have this option available. I can choose where I'm gonna save it, and I'm gonna only option here is basically for me to for video is MP4 format, and I'm gonna choose options and decide what's gonna be the uh, resolution. For instance, I can choose Full HD with aspect ratio like this, and there's another option for scale multiply. It's how thick all the lines are going to be or text in your drawing, and 30 frames per second. This would be kind of standard animation, basically as big as my screen is. I can actually even preview it by pressing on preview frame size. It's gonna appear like that. And also for different sizes, you could just choose 10 720p or custom if you wanted to write in, for instance, 4K quality animations. But for the competition itself, it's enough to choose Full HD, and these seconds could be okay. There's also an option to a loop to starting scene. It's going to simply mean that from the third scene, the view is going to return to the first one. So you could loop the animation without this interruption at the end. And if I wanted to, I could just press OK and export this animation. And what you're going to see is in this animation window, exporting, how approximately long it's going to take to export this full animation. I see that there are 600 frames, and it's going to take around 10 minutes. Well, I'm not going to wait that long, but that's the main idea at least. And I'm going to close this export window for now. And a few tips at least for these simple camera animations. It's usually best to follow some rules that also apply, for instance, for architectural video uh, taking and drone photography. Is that you need to keep the animation as simple as possible, its movement, so you could better focus on the objects themselves. For instance, first I'm gonna just change maybe the transition time to something like 3 seconds again. And what I mean about simplifying the animation is, for instance, I could have a view where my camera is looking directly at this facade, and I could simply move from one side to the other. One problem is that simply by creating scenes, I won't be available to have them at the same height from the uh, from this base. So when you want to create more interesting animations, you will have to draw some extra lines for them. For instance, I'm going to take a line, the line tool, and draw a line from this corner up at the height 1700 millimeters, and the same in other corners of the base as well. All right. I also change the field of view by selecting the zoom tool to simply, I'd say, 60 degrees. And I'm going to create the first view. And that is done by using the position camera tool. The trick is I must not simply click somewhere on the base, but I need to use this tool and create this drag motion from this endpoint to this one. And with this line, I'm drawing the view I want, the camera position and the camera target. And now I'm simply going to update the first scene like this. Okay. And for the second one, I'll do the same. Choosing position camera, drawing this line, and updating scene 2. So what I get out of it is that I can press on scene 1 to scene 2, and I get this very precise movement from left to right. Also, another option would be to create this movement, for instance, diagonally. Choose um, position camera again, this time drawing a diagonal line. I'm gonna update scene 3. Okay, I'm at that scene, and I'm gonna create another one from the opposite side, from here to here, and I'll create it as scene number 4. And to check what I got out of it, going from 4 to 3, I have this precise rotational movement around my house. And the good thing is that also with this, I get a precise 2 point perspective, which compositionally just looks better as well. And that's the main idea, I guess. Um, when creating these combined videos as well, it would simply just to exclude the part that is from scene 2 from and scene 3. You can simply cut that out and combine the scenes together later on. And all right, and one extra thing, I could, if wanted, to start excluding some scenes from animation as well. Uh, in the scenes dialog window, I can turn on extra details. And for instance, if I wanted to create simply an animation from scene 1 to scene 2, you'll see that for each of the scenes, I can turn off this checkbox, include in animation. All right. And if I would try to save quick animation now. I'll reduce the resolution, leave it at 30 frames per second. If you're exporting very high quality animations, it might actually take an hour for you. For instance, for 4K quality image videos, each frame basically is as a separate image. So it might take a second or a few to actually render it. So if I check this animation now, it's quite too fast, but at least I can see all the detail. Also, the shadows, they didn't disappear. I could now change the frame rate at the animation time to say 10 seconds, and it should look quite okay. All right, so just keep the animation simple, moving in one axis at a time, or limiting the movement to rotation, for instance, from left to right, or for instance from up to down, or maybe in two axes. So you have to have a precise center point where you're pointing at, always for the camera target. And for instance, for animations where I have a bit more precise, maybe this rotation around an object, it would be useful to draw, for instance, one line. That's going to be the, let me draw it straight up. It's going to be the center line, and then I could draw another. And using the rotate tool, I'm going to rotate it, say to 60 degrees, and press 5x to copy it around. So X for at least for my experiments, 6 is optimal to get this perfect motion around an object. So each scene would be simply set with target pointing towards the center, and I could even angle it if camera is too close, maybe to the object, to get a better view as well. All right, that's kind of for basic animations, but you'll see that there are other things that are included that we can animate with the scenes. So I'm gonna revert the file to its beginnings, and now we're gonna see the power of SketchUp scenes. Why it's quite often used in many architectural project presentations, as it might maybe the project itself might be often constructed in SketchUp, in Revit, in AutoCAD, other software, but quite often SketchUp is the place where it is presented, just because these fantastic scene animation tools. So, for instance, if I wanted to first show a few variants of the model, or for instance to turn off some elements from my SketchUp model, what I have to do is I have tags the dialog window active, also scenes. So I'm simply gonna maybe move it up so I can clearly see all these things, and I'm now gonna isolate a bit what kind of elements I'm gonna animate with scenes. For the first four, where we had this basic camera animation, we had basically everything turned on. But right now, the only thing I need is to see the visible tags. So, for instance, this view where I have basically everything visible, I can save it as a scene, and I can now at least name it as well. I'm gonna name it where I can see full model. That's it. And for the next one, I'm gonna simply turn off the roof, tag, instantly create another scene, and gonna call it without roof. And check how it works. So simply by clicking, I can change how it's gonna the model is gonna behave. So I can also show, for instance, two variants of my design. I'm gonna turn the roof on, save it as another scene, roof version 1, and then we're gonna turn it off, turn on another tag, and have a second version of this roof, and save it as a new scene, roof version 2. So right now, simply by clicking on the appropriate scenes, I can change to two variants. So it would be very helpful, for instance, if you create a few variants of your Sanda Gnomon, and you can check which simply looks better. You don't have to dig around these tags every time. And also, it's very helpful, for instance, if you're presenting from devices like your smartphone or iPad. So you don't have to open any of these tags, extra windows. You have just one button that can instantly change your model. And also, it's useful when sending presentation models to clients, right? When they don't actually have to know how to use any of SketchUp modeling tools, they can simply check what's written there, or you can communicate with them even remotely, and you can be sure that what you set up with these scenes is precisely what people are going to see. And these are the first four scenes that only changed how the tags are set up. For the next few, I'm going to show another aspect. It's the shadow animation, which is the most important one for the sundial. So I'm going to first create a new scene. I don't need the tags anymore. I'm going to turn off for the fifth scene all of these options. I'm going to name it without shadows. All right. And simply, it's a state where all the shadows are turned off. And I'm going to, for this scene, check shadow settings. So one moment, and it's saved. I'm gonna go to this details panel, and uh, I would like to disable uh, scene thumbnails so they wouldn't be created every time. All right. And for a moment, I'm also gonna turn off all this furniture. The model should load a bit faster, at least. So if I turn off without shadows, so shadows are not seen. So I'm going to turn them off, on, and set them, for instance, to the morning. Or, for instance, if I'm checking a sundial model, I could create scenes from the shadows dialog to direct hour marks. For instance, my scene is going to be set up 7 a.m. That's going to That's gonna be the morning. So I'm creating a scene with add scene, and I'm gonna name it 7 a.m. Then I'm gonna change, for instance, the time to the evening, say 5 p.m. Creating a scene, I'll write 5 p.m. and what you should see is a shadow animation. So in 3 seconds, I'm jumping from 7 a.m. to 5 a.m. And what I could do, for instance, is maybe I'm gonna create a few more in between. So the first one was at 7. The second one is gonna be at 8 a.m. And then at 9. And then at 10. And so on. I hope you get the idea that I could have these specific hours set up like this. And for instance, if you save the end shadow animation, I guess very good settings would be to choose animation, have it to 2 to 3 seconds, and have a 1 second or maybe half a second delay. And that would mean that I could save export animation only by using maybe these shadow scenes, and you would get a fantastic presentation of the how the sundial actually works. All right, that works okay. And after that, I wanted to create another type of shadow scene animation. So I'm going to go into scenes, go to the last one, create a new scene, and exclude all check marks, because this one is going to change how my um, section planes are going to work in the SketchUp model. For instance, first one is going to be called no section. And for a moment, we're going to turn off the shadows. I'll create one section cut, and I'll place it, for instance, horizontally. Okay. And move it to the necessary height. Then I'll create the second section. It's going to be located like this for an elevation. And using move tool, I'm going to move it like this. So I have two sections right now. To change which is active, I can simply double click on the necessary one. If I again double click on the one that is active, then it's going to be turned off. So I could basically have three states where sections are all not visible. One is visible, or the other is invisible. So in this instance, I see that neither of them are visible. So for this no section scene, I'm gonna turn on the check mark active section planes. Then I'm gonna turn on this section, create a new scene. I'm gonna name it plan, and then I'll turn on this one, create a new scene, and I'll name it elevation. And I can check how they work now. By jumping from elevation to pan, you also see this very nice section animation. So I'm gonna, uh, for a moment, go to view and turn off section planes so they won't appear. So every time when I press on a given scene, the necessary section is going to turn on in this smooth animation. And for now, all these scenes are not connected. So, for instance, if I would turn on full model scene, I could see everything together, or go to elevation view. So I see all the furniture as well. And I could go back, for instance, to no section. I could go to roof variant 1. For instance, I don't have a special scene to just turn off furniture, but I'm gonna do this manually then. So, for instance, I can analyze this first design with this kind of roof, see to see what the animation shadow animation looks from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then I could turn off the second roof variant. Again, I'm gonna just manually turn off the uh, furniture. I guess I could update the scenes simply. Okay, it's gonna be better right now. All right, and roof variant 2 and check the animation again. Sometimes you will have to turn the shadows on and off to get this smooth animation. Um, and but if you save it as a video, it should always be viewed in full quality. So there are also other things that you can change with scenes. When exporting as animation, you'll see there's hidden objects, also styles. Simply by going to one scene to other, you could change the style and location of access and what kind of geometry is hidden. But for most occasions, I only use camera, section planes, and shadow settings. So you can see that this kind of magic is in that I don't have to use any of the dialogues or these toolbars. I can change how the design is presented simply by pressing on these buttons, right? And this is one way how to animate with scenes. The second type of animation I wanted to show is how I can interactively present some design objects. And for that, I'm going to revert to the beginning again. So let me turn everything on again. All right. So all that I have open right now is a toolbar called dynamic components. You can turn it off by right clicking and turning dynamic components. And what are they? So, the most useful feature, I guess, for them is for presentation purposes, where I can use this interact to press on an object, and for instance, I can open the door. So it's gonna be easier to me to go inside. Then, for instance, I have a wardrobe. I wanted to show what's inside of it. Again, I can simply press on the door and show, for instance, this is the place where the shoes are gonna be, and that door is animated as well. I can also, for instance, just change the position of some furniture, open drawers, or actually even change the size of objects from given dimensions. Or, for instance, if I have to present how the couch could unfold, first I'm going to press here. I have a hidden feature that I can hide some objects, the pillows. Then I'm going to move this and rotate this part. And voila, I have an unfolded couch. I can press again to go back to the beginning. And it's also very useful to, for instance, for design of some furniture. I can show that here I'm going to have a dishwasher. I can show how I can open the cabinets where everything is going to be hidden, and simply communicate better your ideas with the designer to clients using these dynamic component tools. There are other options for parametric modeling and so on, but the basic idea is for this class, I'm going to show how to create a simple animation for objects' position or its rotation, and also to see what maybe are the limitation of these dynamic component tools. I'm going to start in a new SketchUp file. All right. And I'll just have some very simple object. For instance, this is going to be a door. For instance, I'm going to draw this kind of wardrobe, very large one. Okay, let me type some dimensions actually. So 2 meters by uh, 600. I'll push pull it up. 2 meters. I'm going to use offset tool and push pull. This part I'm simply gonna create as a group, and I'm gonna draw a door. I'll use push pull, and I'm gonna save it as a component door. So this is the object that I want to animate between, say, two positions. So all you have to do is open up dynamic components attribute window. You'll see that for the selected object, I can see what attributes are active. So for the door, I'm going to add an attribute called position in x-axis. And right now you'll see the position is so from this point. But what I would suggest is to draw, for instance, one simple line at kind of the starting point from this object, and I'll select them together, create them as a component, and I'll call it dynamic door. All right. And right now I can actually go inside of it and delete this line. It's not necessary. The main thing is that doors and these any kind of object should usually be as a two-level group or component. So I have the object that I'm gonna animate, and you have this outside container. So right now in this container, at least the position is 0. It's gonna be a lot easier to do these kinds of um, animation functions for the object. And I can check how it works actually. So let's see, the position is 0 right now. I could go inside of it and write 50, and it moved. I'm gonna change it back to 0. And for this upper level component, I need to add two attributes. One is my own attribute. I'm gonna simply name it, for instance, move. And the other one is an on click behavior attribute that is provided by this component attributes window. And inside of it, I will need to write in a simple function. About these functions, you'll see there's a huge list in this section with different kind of mathematical, trigonometrical, logical, and other functions. But what I need is on clicks function. So the one I need is animate between a few states. I don't have to necessarily click on it, but if I choose it, at least I can see what is the kind of the syntax of this function. So what I have to write is what kind of few what kind of few positions I'm gonna have. So it looks like I'll need one position that is here at 0, and the other one is 970 millimeters. So I can write simply 0 right now, and in this on click, I'll write in animate, open parenthesis. What I'm gonna animate? I'm gonna animate this move. I'm gonna click on it. Sorry, about time. Comma, and the first value is gonna be 0, comma, and the second one is gonna be 97. So it's in inches right now. I can change it to centimeters. So animate again, move 0 and 97, and that's it. So let me check. So after I wrote this function, I can press on the object, and what I see is that this move attribute is changing. What is not changing is the position of the door, but I simply can link it together by over here writing equals and pressing on this move attribute on this upper level. And that's basically it. You'll see now when I press on the door, it's animated. And if I write here, instead of animate, write in animate slow, then the movement is going to be slower. And basically, if I wanted to create the second door, I can use it. Just going to simply copy it right here inside. No, I'm going to actually copy it to the same position. I'm going to press on it, and then I'm going to move it a bit forward. All right, and that should do it. So now I have these two sliding doors that covers the full wardrobe, and I could simply create a group out of it, and it wouldn't matter if I change the direction by uh, rotating the object, because what was important is that I have the dynamic door component in two levels. And for instance, the other option that I can use is for rotation. Create a quick example. I create a cube. I'm gonna make it as a component. I'm gonna draw this line again, combine it in a second component, dynamic cube, go inside of it and delete this line. So I'm gonna check the attributes. So what I want to animate for this cube, this time I'm gonna choose object's rotation in z-axis, for instance. I'm gonna change it to centimeters again. So I write my own attribute. It's gonna be called rotation. I'm gonna write in 0, and I can, for instance, already link this together with this attribute. Writing in equals rotation, enter. All right, and I'm gonna add attribute called on click again. And inside of it, I'm writing animate, open parentheses. I'm going to animate rotation, comma, between values 0, comma, say 45 and 90 degrees. Close parentheses, enter, and that's it. It should already work. You'll see how it rotates around this z-axis. And for instance, if this was the object was a bit more narrow, it simply became a door. So so that's that easy. Um, what I would suggest is to go to 3D Warehouse and check many thousands of already available dynamic component examples. For instance, if I write in dynamic door, what's useful is in the advanced section, you'll see there's a filter called dynamic components, and only those are going to be showed. So I have different cabinets here. I can also go to models category. I see simple doors. And yeah, for any of these models, you can download them and you could open the attribute editor to see how exactly it is made. You'll see it's in different levels, and let's see if there's an animation function. Yeah, there is a simple sliding door. One great problem for dynamic components is in limitations. For instance, in a rotation axis. So, for instance, if for instance, in this sofa example, I had this rotation, for this part, but if I go inside of it, I want to see the axis. So over here, what's happening when animating? There are going to be two things animated, both the rotation and um, also the position of the model slightly. So, for instance, I can't put the middle of axis, the axis at the middle of object and have it as a rotational point. In these cases, there are two options. So for more advanced animation, one of my favorites is using SketchUp physics animation tools. For for it, you're gonna need an older version of SketchUp, because right now, if you would look inside of extension warehouse, you could install it on SketchUp 2022, for instance, but it's not going to work yet. Its developer is still looking how to adjust it to work for the newer versions. But if you install SketchUp Make 2017 inside extension warehouse, you'll see a plugin called MS Physics. And the basic function is that, for instance, I'll draw a simple base, draw an object, and what I can turn on is the physics kind of play state, where I can start my simulations. And I can set, for instance, this object in its MS Physics state to be static. And if I would turn on the animation again, you'll see that my object is is not falling to the abyss somewhere. I can keep moving it right like this. So in MS Physics, what's working is both gravitational as well as friction forces. So if I start moving an object, it doesn't continue moving indefinitely. And what it means is you can create a lot more advanced types of simulations, at least. Also using forces of elasticity, magnetism, buoyancy. And for instance, if I chose for this object a different material, say instead of default, I could pick aluminum. Aluminum. So right now, when starting the simulation, it behaves a bit more differently, and it usually is a lot more apparent if you start putting pieces together. For instance, I write, I just copy 10 times, and if I turn on the simulation, it doesn't move around. But if it had a more elasticity to this object, it could the tower could fall for itself. So for these presentation purposes, MS Physics would allow you to create very complex mechanical presentations where gravitational other forces would interact with each other. So, for instance, I can even add different kind of gizmos, hinges, motors to the object. And for a demonstration, for instance, I'm gonna create a slider like this. And what I can do is use this tool called joint connection tool. Pressing shift and connecting this joint to this object. And now if I turn on the simulation, you'll see the object only moves in this specific slider position. And to present it a bit more interactively, like I can also do, I can choose this slider. Maybe gonna, if I bring this object up a bit, for instance, by even a few millimeters, I guess it should move more freely. Yeah, so friction forces are not interacting with the object anymore, but it keeps keeps going indefinitely. So what I can do is just maybe draw a shape. Uh, I could change its state to static as well. And if I turn on the simulation again, now it's simply going to bounce, bounce around. So returning, what I can do is select the slider in this UI uh, option. I could add, uh, where was it? A controller to it. So let me see. It's been some time before I used it. So slider. So let me see. Okay, this function is not working for me right now. But what I can show is maybe a already created example that's gonna work much better for presentation. For instance, uh, if you simply write in YouTube SketchUp physics, you'll see, for instance, the people have created very advanced connected objects with sliders. And for instance, what you could see, it works actually almost as a game. So you could create these tank animations or cars or interactive elements as well, and yeah, have fun with it. Actually, that's one option. This was a more advanced one as well. So you have these springs, you have these other elements that connect all the joints, the pieces together, and collisions are working with the ground as well. So you could actually have these moving kind of parts fully connected, and other options. I can say I've personally lost a lot of time playing around with these tools. For instance, I was one of the first ones who created these rendered character animations, in part also using SketchUp Physics plugin. You might recognize this character from the Pixar intros. So this was fully created in SketchUp, and the lamp was created. Its animation states was created with the help of MS Physics plugin. And the basic principle how it was rendered out, it was as a stop motion animation. So it's been uh, 13 years since I created this one. Um, there aren't many options to render out um, these animations with V-Ray, but I guess there were a few other plugins that could handle it. And all right, and what I wanted to add also is another option how you could actually make a very simple type of animation without using physics. All these fancy things is using a plugin. Maybe go to this empty file to present something using scenes. So there's a plugin called keyframe animation. Let me check again. So keyframe animation. It's a paid plugin, but you can test it out for 7 days. And how it works, for instance, I'll create a simple object, group it, I'll go to scenes, and I don't really need to have anything on in these shadows options. I'll create one scene and a second scene. So what I can do is go to this first scene, turn on record objects. So it's going to start recording see my trial is for 7 days. So if I have this record option on, I can start animating the object. For instance, I'm going to simply change its position. All right. Then go into the second scene. I'm going to record it again. And I'll check. If I turn on animate objects, going from first scene to second scene, the object is animated. That's simple. So in every scene, simply by pressing on this record object, is going to save the state how it is saved. And it's also going to work for rotation as well. For instance, I can draw this, maybe I'll draw a polygon, whether see if it's rotating or not, make it as a group. Objects should be grouped or created as a component. That's only the basic thing you have to take account. So for the first scene, I'm gonna record it again. Click. For the second scene, I'm gonna use rotate tool. Where's the center point? Okay, I'm gonna rotate it by 90 degrees and press again. And let's see. Yes, perfect. I have both of these objects animated. So in the first case, you could do the same thing with dynamic components interactively, but as of now, there's no ways how to save some dynamic components attributes inside of scenes. So you can't animate something with those. But like this, with keyframe animation, you can. And also, what you can do is you can save it as a video file. For instance, if I chose export animation to video, okay, it requires me to save the model at least. And if I chose export animation as video, okay, turn on animation, what I have to choose the frame rate, the frame size, and the codec. And in the end, it's gonna create this animation. It is gonna take some time to render out because it seems it's not as efficient as the way you're directly saving the animation from export options. But at least you have this object movement inside of SketchUp. So I'd say that animation overall, it's enough for these kind of mechanical animations. for doors, for other kind of objects to present inside of SketchUp. The limit definitely inside of SketchUp is some character animation or combinations with camera animation, with character animation and object animation, and physics together. You can't do that easily, but if all you have to do is show, for instance, how you can change positions, rotations of objects, it's quite enough. And that's for now. I say it's it. There's a whole lot of extra things you can learn about uh, dynamic components, uh, MS Physics, and key from animation. I suggest to look at YouTube. There's a whole library of tutorials how to work with these plugins, but at least I hope you got a good sense of what are the possibilities. And